Really exciting conversation. And so I'm going to introduce our panel, get into some questions that I'll moderate, and then we'll get into Q&A from you. Great, to my right, we have Richard D. Kalbuber. He's an education and housing policy researcher, writer, consultant, and speaker. Rick is also a senior fellow at the Progressive Policy Institute, was the non-resident scholar at Georgetown University's McCourt School of Public Policy, and is a professorial lecturer at George Washington University's Trachtenberg School of Public Policy, Public Administration. He's the author or editor of ET books on topics including education and affirmative action, and relevant to our conversation today, his most recent book is Excluded: How Snob Zoning, NIMBYism, and Class Bias Build the Walls We Don't See. Next, we have Mo Rushdy. He's the managing partner of the Riverwards Group. The Riverwards Group has completed more than 60 projects in Philadelphia's booming Riverwards neighborhoods, totaling close to 500 homes over the last 8 years. He serves as president of the Building Industry Association of Philadelphia and also serves as the chairman of the Philadelphia Accelerator Fund, a nonprofit promoting affordable housing financing tools for Black and Brown businesses. Recently, Mo was asked to join Mayor Parker's transition team as vice chair of her Housing, Planning, and Development Subcommittee. And last but definitely not least, we have Leslie Smallwood-Lewis, who is the founder and CEO of Mosaic Development Partners. Mosaic is a Philadelphia-based minority certified commercial estate development and project management company. It primarily focuses on ground-up development and adaptive reuse of commercial properties in underserved urban communities. Since 2012, Mosaic and its partners have secured and invested more than $500 million in Philadelphia neighborhoods, which has led to the creation of hundreds of construction jobs and other full-time positions, the elimination of more than 1 million square feet in blight, and additional investment in those communities and BIPOC businesses. In 2020, Mosaic was awarded the rights to curling off the Philadelphia Navy Yard, a 20-year mixed-use redevelopment. So, this is definitely a group of people who can talk a lot about today's topic, which is we're here to talk about whether building more housing would help solve Philadelphia's housing crisis. But before we get to that question, I think we need to define what type of housing crisis we have here in Philadelphia. Because especially from outside of the city, a lot of people would look at Philadelphia's housing crisis, where the median price is $250,000, and think our housing is actually relatively affordable compared to other major cities and even compared to the national average median household cost, which is $387,000. So let's start here. What are the problems Philadelphians are facing when it comes to housing? And then Mo or Leslie, do you want to kick it off since you're Philadelphia natives? Yeah.
Ladies first, currently, Brent on that. Hi, babe.
About great. I'm a little tired about having Philadelphia so we have to really know that for what it is, and we're not comparing ourselves to other cities that are A to A and B to B comparison. So what's relatively affordable someplace else, not relatively affordable for many people in this city. So that starts the affordable housing conversation. How do we address people where they are? And unfortunately, 40% of our city really is living in poverty. So I think that's the first answer to the question. How do we do it? That's the question.
We got to define it for you. What are they for? You said affordable. You just hear that's very too many different definitions, right? You've got nationally occurring affordable housing, right? That's a lot of that is being built in the city, right? But that's targeted rebuilding where it may, 70% all the way to 100% AMI, right? Then you've got kind of that medium income, kind of medium affordable workforce housing of 60 to 80%. And then you have the group of, where there's 130,000 households under 40% AMI, which is an issue of defining affordability. When you say AMI, what do you mean by AMI, right? We're talking the area median income. So what is that area median income? Like, is it an MSA area income? Is it a Philadelphia area? So there's a lot of, if you ask that question to tell people that they can differ. But by all codes, everyone says that affordable housing is anyone that's paying less than 120% AMI. That's what gets defined under MUD. That's what gets defined under when you purchase land from the land manager from others. Philly has a special case. The whole student block in general are strong, but you definitely have a poverty issue. If you look at the difference between the AMI level between the city's AMI level and how to define MSA AMI, and there's a difference about 20%. What we call 60% AMI on the other level is more like 40% AMI when it comes to the city. So that's an difference between about 38,000 to close to about 65,000. So we got to start there because that's where a lot of the pushback that you get in a lot of the conversations to cut this stuff at the end and define.
Can we jump in?
Yeah,
yes. So I'm from Washington, D.C. I know much less than these folks do about Philadelphia. And you guys are actually doers. I kind of pontificate, write books, but so what's the reasons to listen to them and take what I say with a grain of salt. But if I could kind of broaden the definition of a housing crisis, there's affordability issue, which it sounds like in Philadelphia is really tough for low-income people, but for your average Philadelphian, maybe it's not the crisis that we see in other cities. But you do have a different kind of housing crisis related to who gets to live where. So, Philadelphia, like many major metropolitan areas, has high levels of segregation by race and by economic status. And one of the things I talk about in the book Excluded is the way in which government creates that problem. And I just want to, I did look in my book index for Philadelphia for relevant anecdotes. And you all, I guess you're right here, Rittenhouse Square, not too far. And I was struck by something that the Philadelphia Visitors Bureau says about Rittenhouse. It says, well, the wealthiest and most exclusive communities. And interestingly, I'm writing a whole book against exclusion. And this is used as a positive term. It's an exclusive community. Well, who are the people on the outside of that? People of modest means, disproportionately people of color. So I think that's one anecdote. The other one I'll share is I write a lot about Balmoral, New Jersey, and the suburban area here. And Mount Laurel is famous for, there was a Supreme Court decision that many of you may know in New Jersey that requires communities to provide their fair share of housing for more economically disadvantaged people. And Mount Laurel, two big things about Mount Laurel. One is it fought that for decades before there was any affordable housing built. And the other thing to note about Mount Laurel is there's a Princeton professor who wrote a book about the experiences of low-income families there. And their kids are doing really well. The property values have not declined in that community once the affordable housing was built. So I think you've got some nationally significant things going on here in the Philadelphia.
It's great. I think it's good to really broaden the issue of the housing crisis to get more into just affordability and really about who gets to live where as well. Let me ask each one of you sort of a question a little bit more about your work. Mo, you, as I mentioned, are serving on this Transition Committee about Hudson Planning and Development. What are some of the policies and programs that you're hoping to see Mayor Parker's administration implement?
All right, so I have an end case, so I can speak. Right, so I'm going to put my BIA.
Okay, do that.
You know, this is very simple, right? I mean, I go back to the example of the article that we saw, you know, a couple of days ago, Bloomberg, about the LA Air with the executive director, which basically produced 16,150 affordable homes in 1 year. And basically what the mayor said, you're going to be doing unlimited density as long as you're putting 100% affordable properties, defining the affordable homes, what it means, right? You're going to get your zoning done in 30 days. You're going to get building permits in 5 days, right? And that's exactly right. And what that directive did is provided predictability, no parking requirements, right? So we're talking about stuff that's being done all around the cities around the country, combating affordable housing. So what would I like to see? I would like to see, I mean, we have Joey Eaton here. He's a great guy that has been working on a lot of policies, and a lot of it is common sense stuff, and a lot of the stuff is stuff that we as the BIA agree with. You need to remove parking requirements. These $4 or $5 million podiums in the middle of neighborhoods need to be removed. How many people drove here? That's like less than 15% of the people, right? People who live in the city don't need cars, and we need to create policies that encourage mass transit. We need to have a robust TOD policy, right? Trans-oriented development policy. Buy-through around cycle lines and around railroads. Unlimited density, smaller units. Get the city to grow. We need to talk about ADUs, accessory development units. We need to get back hypos that was removed
2 years ago, and that's something that we're working on, because once that height bonus was removed, money dried up in the Housing Trust Fund, permits went less. You had policies such as the 10-year tax abatement. Now that's a fight that the development community lost, I think, because of PR reasons, not because of actually whether it worked or not. We all know that it worked, and we all know that when these buildings came off of the 10-year tax abatement, have provided enormous amounts of money to the city. So right now, you need to encourage affordable housing by get back the 10-year tax abatement on developments that have an affordability component. You need to streamline processes when it comes to zoning and provide predictability, LNI, and zoning, and CDR, and the community meetings. Some of these laws are already on the books and they're not being followed. You need to remove the parking requirements. You need to approve accessory dwelling units, right? You need to bring back the bonus program, which encourages the building of affordability units. I'll give you just a simple example. About 2 years ago, there was a housing bonus policy that allowed you to do a height bonus, where you went an extra floor, we'll give you 50% more bonus, right? And you have to do one of two things. You either have to give back 10% of the units, so let's say 100 units, you're gonna get 150. I'm gonna give you back 15 units, you're gonna give me back 15 units as deed restricted affordable homes. Great. Or you can pay an in lieu of amount of providing the affordable units. Now that in lieu of amount was so small that every developer opted to just pay it into the fund. So the city said, we need to triple the fees. We said, as the BIA, we said, please do, because that's the only way you're going to have developers think whether you're going to look between, choose between in lieu of and actually providing the units. Well, what did the city do? They tripled the fees and took away the height bonus. And we're like, what are you doing? How could you do that? That you lost the affordable units and you lost the fees that you were getting. And indeed, 85% decline in the fees, and no one provided the actual units on site. So again, These are 5, 6 policy changes that would encourage density in neighborhood, trans-oriented policy, no parking requirements, ADUs, unlimited density if you're going to provide affordability components. These are all things that are bold. These are things that need to have the administration and city council on the same page. There needs to be an education process in the neighborhoods to get the buy-in. We cannot be talking a big game about providing affordable homes into the neighborhoods and saying, hey, listen, we need more affordability. Yet every developer that goes into a community and try to approve jobs finds the resistance. I am trying to put a 100% affordable home project, 100% affordable home project, right? Wealth creating single family homes, $150,000 of instant equity day one, and I'm being fought. Right? One meeting after the other and lobbying and trying to do this. So we have to make it easier to build homes. We're not going to get affordability without us building more and creating policies that encourage us to build more.
All right, Leslie, I have a separate question for you, but I'm curious for your feedback on that. Do you kind of co-sign all that, or?
No, I mean, I do, but I will say, Mosaic's never done in lieu of, because we are totally committed to affordability, but I understand the dilemma, trust and believe, right? But no, I do. There are a lot of deterrents. We're working on a project right now in Frankfurt, and TOD, literally stone's throw away from the transportation center. And I can't believe that we are struggling with a zoning issue because the back street is considered a primary street. Now we got to go back and subdivide and do all kinds of crazy stuff to make it work under the zoning code, which then delays the project, which then delays your financing. Financing is not always around, right? So it's just, it continues to just go on, and it just makes these projects more expensive and more difficult to really bring to fruition. So that's our reality every day, trying to work through all of those machinations. But you had another question for me, too.
So you just said that you weren't taking the in lieu of deal, and one of the pillars of Mosaic is to create affordable mixed income development. A lot of what gets built these days is either focused on either side of the segment, either segment of the market, luxury or affordable. So how are you achieving the goal of mixed income housing in Philadelphia?
It's a great question. Thank you. And that is something primarily that Mosaic has focused on in creating mixed income and mixed use projects, because we also truly believe that this is not just a housing crisis. This is a job creation and entrepreneurship and business creation issue as well. Because if you can create the commercial portion too, you're also feeding families. You know, you're giving people jobs, you're giving people quality goods and services that they need in these neighborhoods. For us, our preference is not to isolate affordability or to group affordability. We think we need to really promote inclusiveness so that everyone is living together. Not always the easiest thing to figure out economically, because a lot of these programs, and I'm talking about neighborhoods where public subsidy is going to be required. You're not getting the top rent that you're getting in Center City or in neighborhoods that are fully established like a Northern Liberty. So when you also have to find programs that play nice in the sandbox, because they typically don't always. They're not on the same cycle of applications. They don't always, like I said, work well together, so you can use some and then not others, so you can't marry everything together. But we have really worked very, very hard to figure out what can work together. We have not been primarily low-income housing tax credit developers. We did one at 7th and Lehigh for veterans, and that was really our only LIHTC deal. We have typically used new market tax credits and leveraged those in a way to be able to bring affordability to our projects, but let them be mixed income. So just as you talked about AMI, we'll have a blend of, 40 to 60%. Case in point, Sharswood Ridge, for anyone that knows that project at 21st and Ridge, we have 30% of those units that are in the 40 to 60% AMI. We've got another 30% of those that are at 80% AMI, and then the rest are considered market rate. Now, market rate is from neighborhood to neighborhood in the city, right? What market rate is at 21st and Ridge is not market rate in Fishtown. So you really have to know what that particular market is. I think those apartments that we're considering market rate are at about 90 to 100% AMI. We can't even reach 120% AMI in that neighborhood. So for us, we're crossing all of those AMIs in that project effectively. 98 units, we only have 7 more to lease, and we literally do have that blend. Now, let me say this. The only way that we achieve that is, one, by using the new market tax credits. It was also an opportunity zone location, so we were able to achieve private equity at a little bit of a more desirable IRR rate. And this was also a partnership with the Philadelphia Housing Authority. They brought in the debt at a low interest rate to make that project work. So you need that kind of creativity to make projects like this work. So, kudos to PHA that they had a comprehensive plan for that neighborhood, and they stepped up and they wanted to see this project work. But it takes that kind of creativity and that kind of public-private partnership to make these types of projects work.
I want to just mention something that's very important. And Leslie said the word creativity. And I'm not going to push back against that. I'm going to say that we have to be able to achieve policies that naturally are attractive, that can attract scale, right? Scale. City of Philadelphia is a city of small things. We cannot scale anything, right? We always think small, right? We're thinking about programs. We're not thinking about policies, right? The mayor has a very ambitious plan of 30,000 homes, right, over the next coming 4 to 8 years. So these are a lot of homes. This is not going to come without some serious policy change that changes the behavior of developers and the will to do business and to develop in the city of Philadelphia. Because it's very simple. So the way we're financed is our equity comes from, an LP structure with 60 different investors. These investors can go elsewhere. I can get them a deal in Florida and they'll be like, all right, we'll do this one and we won't do this one. So the question is, how can we scale production in the city of Philadelphia in a way that's equitable, in a way that the neighborhoods don't feel that their neighborhoods are being attacked by developers, that there is enough buy-in and a lot of education has to happen between the community and the elected officials. One of the issues that we face as a city when it comes to housing is the developing community is put out to the fire on their own, right? Meaning that we are expected as a developing community, and I have our first cohort here of UDA and led by Rick Young and Jordan, the Urban Development Association. 9 black developers are going to be leveraging the Accelerator Fund and public land and build 100% affordable homes. Well, let me tell you, the first 2 black and brown developers from Black Squirrel Group got denied by the land bank on their first application, right? Here's building affordable homes by black and brown developers in the neighborhoods, and we're still getting pushback. This has to change, right? The attitude has to change towards development, right? And I think I mentioned this before coming here, which is, we've polled people, right? We spent a lot of money in the last election cycle trying to understand how people think about development. 80% of people think of development, I'm not going to say the word, but think negatively of developers, right? Because when you say the word development, they see the tower cranes in Center City, right? They don't see what Leslie's doing. They don't see the stuff that's happening in Kensington, where naturally our homes are between 72% to 95% AMI. That's market rate, right? That is leased by 48% minorities in these buildings. That's not being discussed enough. So the word development is a very broad brush. And this is very important that Everyone has to be on the same page. Administration, council, and community as well.
Okay, I'm going to come back to this kind of issue of who, is going to champion some of these ideas and how to make that happen. But I did want to pick up a little of what Leslie was talking about in terms of, and both of you were talking about, in terms of creating more inclusive, integrated neighborhoods. And that's something that, Rick, you have written about. You wrote many books about affirmative action in education and diversity in K-12 schools. How did the study of these subjects lead you to take an interest in housing and zoning?
Well, I'm a slow learner, and housing policy is school policy. That's the key point that I missed for many, many years. Not completely missed, but I came around to deciding this had to be the subject of my next book because 71% of students attend neighborhood public schools. So I'd been spending a lot of time trying to figure out ways to bring kids of different backgrounds together by through charter schools or magnet schools or other types of choice within the public school system. And those are all the types of policies I continue to support. But ultimately, we have to deal with housing segregation if we want to deal with school segregation. And the reason that's so important is that the number one predictor of how well a student will do is the economic status of their family, socioeconomic status of their family. The second biggest predictor is the socioeconomic status of their classmates. And so low-income students, if given the right environment, that the types of mixed income environments that you're building, Leslie, those types of environments are the best thing that education research has found to do for children, and the middle class kids benefit as well. So I wanted to get at the housing barriers that kind of coincide or work with the school boundary barriers to create segregation. The last thing I'll say is you all have a Montgomery County here, right? Yeah. So we have a Montgomery County too in Maryland, and right outside of Washington, D.C. And there were two interventions that the officials in Montgomery County engaged in for improving student achievement. Montgomery County is a liberal community. They care about every child's success, and so the school board said we're going to spend $2,000 extra per pupil in the higher poverty areas of Montgomery County. And then the housing authority simultaneously was enforcing a long-standing policy. This was a good inclusionary zoning policy, not a poorly designed one, where when a builder develops a certain number of units, she sets aside 15% of the units for economically disadvantaged people, and then gets a density bonus, so it's financially feasible for them. And so in Montgomery County, there are low-income students who are in high-poverty communities, and then there are some who are in economically mixed and even affluent areas. And a researcher from the RAND Corporation studied who did better: the low-income students who got the extra $2,000 per pupil, or those who went to economically mixed schools. And the results were unmistakable. Over time, the economically disadvantaged students who had a chance to go to the economically mixed schools did far better, even though they were getting $2,000 less per pupil in those schools. And so it was a powerful reminder that that we have to, if you care about education, you have to care about housing policy. Now, there are a million other things. If you care about the environment, you have to care about housing policy as well. But anyway, that's what led me to housing.
Well, I think that's actually a really powerful point, because figuring out who the allies are for building more housing is going to be really important. And I think
pretty much every Philadelphian is in favor of improving education outcomes for the kids who live in the city. So that could be a great way to kind of build more excitement about building more housing. And so I guess to get to that point, I would love to hear some thoughts about, Mo, you mentioned a bunch of really exciting ideas about, eliminating parking requirements, accessory dwelling units. I honestly have not seen much enthusiasm about a lot of these ideas from the general public or from city council. Up to now, we obviously have a new mayor. So I'm just kind of curious where you see the champions for this and how to message to the public to be supportive of these ideas, because ultimately I think a lot of our elected officials respond to the way that their constituents, think about housing.
Right. So any policy that starts with the word mandatory is bad. Take that for a fact. It's bad. Because whoever put the policy is someone that has not financed a 20, 40, 50, $100 million deal. And so when it's mandatory, right, it's a problem, right? And we've seen this happen in different areas in the city. In the 3rd and the 7th, which resulted in 0 units being built, even though the intent was good. Both council members are friends. The intent was great, right? But it resulted in 0 units. Why? Right? Because it did not pencil out. Very simple. Going back to voluntary inclusionary zoning is exactly our bonus program. That was voluntary. Hey, we're going to give you 50% more units. You're going to give us back 10% for affordable housing, right? And if you do that, you might get a tax abatement now that we have the state bill that has passed. Now we're trying to reduce the requirements a little bit for it to have more effect. But in essence, the champions, we have to be, we can't talk with both sides of our mouth. That's the problem, right? We keep on saying we have a need of affordable housing. We need 36,000 homes. Greg Heller, your husband, was one of the people that put that research out. We need 36,000 by 2030. It's 2023. Do the math. That means we got to do 4,000 homes every year. How are we going to do 4,000 homes every year with the current policies if you don't have the incentives to build 4,000 homes? 4,000 affordable homes. So, number one, we have to have an education series of what we can do and what we cannot do, right? So, the private sector can offer so much to the issue of affordable housing. Housing supply in general, if you increase housing supply just by the normal forces of supply and demand, you put a lid on pricing. But there's some scary stats out there. If you've seen the latest multifamily report, where permitting is dropping by 2024, this year, 2024, it's going to be down by 52% from the previous year. So all these tower cranes that you see and all that housing supply that you feel that is out there that people are saying, oh, look at all these glut of apartments that are going to come into the market in the city of Philadelphia. That's true. There's going to be a lot of apartments coming in 2024. It's going to have a little bit of a slow absorption, couple years. But the scary part is that by the end of 2025 and 26, you're going to have no delivery of units, right? It's gone down dramatically. It's reaching very, very scary numbers. I have information that now you can schedule zoning in 45 days and 60 days because they don't have enough applications. That is scary, right? So we have to be on the same page of how to achieve that 36,000. We're not going to make everyone happy. And there's limited resources. Let's be also pragmatic with that, right? There's a number that was thrown out there of $5.5 billion to solve the housing crisis in the city of Philadelphia. Great, okay, we know the number. We can spend 10% of that. So how are you going to solve the issue? Solving the issue is, one, you have to get everyone on the same page to encourage naturally occurring affordable housing. It's the number one source for affordable housing in the city of Philadelphia that no one realizes. It's all the market rate stuff that's happening in these neighborhoods that are falling under great affordability levels where people making $20 to $25 an hour are able to afford, right? And you've got to put policies out there that encourage voluntary inclusion of affordable housing in people's building by creating bonuses, density, height bonuses, tax benefits, okay? I'm not saying return the 10-year tax abatement for all market rate jobs, even though that would not be a bad idea, but it's a losing PR kind of conversation here. But at least link it to affordable housing, which has passed state. It has passed state now for how long? For over a year and a half, 2 years? And we can't pass it in the city. Like, how are we dealing with these issues of urgent matters of affordable housing, yet we're not taking urgent measures? And that's what we have to do.
Do you want to add some thoughts to that?
Well, I agree. I'm in an interesting situation because we've also expanded into Delaware and into Maryland. So I'm able to see how other markets and other townships and counties treat things. And in particular, in Dover, Delaware, we did some master planning. And, what I see there is a willingness to do exactly what you're saying, Mo, where the city sees the future, knows that they have to play a role in it, and they went to action. They went to the zoning code. They changed things. They what the setbacks. They released some of those pressures so that you could have the density. They reduced the parking requirements, but they did it with intention. And it was amazing to see because it was so refreshing because I don't see that kind of approach in Philadelphia. So for them to go in, take what our recommendations were in the master plan and really follow it as a roadmap, I was like, wow, I wish I could bring some of this mindset back to Philadelphia. And I've been seeing the same things in Maryland. We're doing work in Prince George's County where they're very developer friendly. And I know for some that makes some people cringe because a lot of people don't like us developers, but they really are trying to take a position to get rid of the barriers and all of the hurdles to be able to get these projects work. So we do need to be more intentional about it. We do need to be lockstep, and our city needs to be lockstep and really listening. I'm hoping that the committee, that a lot of the things that have been talked about and recommended, are taken to heart. I'm encouraged by, I think, what I'm hearing from the mayor. And I think she's bringing a new energy that I hope is going to really take hold, but it can't be just her, right? She's got to have the right people with her, beside her, that have the vision to be able to implement some of the things that she's been talking about. But if she's able and capable of doing that, I do see some light at the end of the tunnel, but we do need it. We do need it because we have all the other challenges. Construction is expensive. Labor has gone up. Material has gone up. These projects, interest rate is through the roof, right? All of those things have us really questioning, can we do projects? Do we need to stand down right now and wait this out? And that's why you're seeing so few people now applying for permits because you can't get financing. It literally doesn't pencil. I call Steve all the time. I'm like, can CPACE work? Can this solve my issues? Because I got problems. And it's a crazy time right now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say the politics of build baby build have always been very, very tough. And when I started researching my book, I couldn't point to a lot of, this was in 2017, I couldn't point to a lot of examples of success of where not in my backyard forces were overcome. But since then, we have seen a number of communities, both communities and a number of states that have recognized the current situation is not sustainable. And there have been some fascinating political coalitions that have come together around change. Minneapolis was the first major city to address the issue of, they have single-family exclusive zoning in 70% of their land. And they changed that entirely and said, we're going to allow duplexes and triplexes everywhere, and then we're going to allow lots of development near transit and deal with parking issues. And they did it. I interviewed some of the folks there, and I said, what was different? They said the secret sauce was elevating the voices of communities that hadn't been part of the conversation. So when you have a zoning issue, it's frankly people who look exactly like me. It's the people who dominate zoning meetings. If you look at the minutes, it's older white property owners. That's me, and that's ridiculous. That's the dominant voice in 2024. And so that's what Minneapolis, they made sure that everyone was involved. People who hadn't been involved in those sorts of decisions were recruited and made, they were asked, what kind of housing future would you want for the city? They also got the civil rights groups involved because they looked at the zoning maps and the previous redlining maps, and they were, you overlaid the two of them, and they were kind of mirror images. So the redlining, as you know, is the places where the federal government would not insure support housing and insure mortgages, and it's the other areas, the green areas, that have today the single-family exclusive zoning. So that was the one thing. The other thing I'll mention quickly is at the state level, really interesting coalitions as well, and I'll point to California and Oregon. And Larry Platt and I we're both obsessed with Bobby Kennedy. Senior, not just to be clear. And in 1968, when he ran for president, he brought together working class white people, working class black people, Hispanic communities, and got them to recognize common interests. And that's what happened in California and Oregon. You would not have had statewide zoning reform if it hadn't been for some Republicans who represented white working class communities align with communities of color, representatives who were there in support of communities of color, coming together against very wealthy, exclusive communities, Democrat or Republican, that were in opposition. So I think the point is it can be done with the right set of political coalitions.
Yep.
I want to add that and you said it just right, you could say it, the developer that's going into these communities is primarily white, right? Let's be very, direct about this. And this is one of the reasons why there's programs like the MDP by the Land Bank, president of the Land Bank is here today, and UDA, Urban Development Association, right? 2 cohorts of black developers every year that's going to be doing anywhere between $3 to $5 million of work, creating 40 to 50 established black and brown developers that's doing development in the communities. The developers that are developing in these communities have to also start looking like the people that live in these communities, right? And we gotta encourage this as a private sector, not only encouraging policies that increase housing supply, because we know that's the right thing to do, or increase densities or remove parking requirements, but also inclusivity when it comes to the process of development itself. Right? This is something that has been missing by the city of Philadelphia. And over the last 2 years, a lot of work has been put between these organizations like Black Squirrel, UDA, MDP, along with the Accelerator Fund, that really enabled that now to happen, right? Because it brings people closer, bridges that gap of understanding, right? When the developers go out into these neighborhoods, look the same as the people living in these neighborhoods. And then we think that you're going to see more kind of seeing eye to eye when it comes to development when you're developing equitably.
Right. Hopefully also some of the developers are actually working in their own neighborhoods. So they sort of come also with the knowledge of what their neighborhood needs and wants, and kind of have relationships there as well. I think we have probably about time for one or two more questions before we get to the Q&A. Are we at time for Q&A?
I think so.
Okay.
I don't want to keep.
Okay, I'll ask
I
one
have
more
no
question, then we'll get
sound.
into the Q&A, which is just that, Leslie, you were mentioning a lot about sort of the difficulty of making things pencil out, and also talked about the importance of creative projects where you have a public partner. And I think there's a lot of discussion right now around cities, for example, incentivizing office building conversions, providing certain tax incentives to turn that into residential. You've mentioned the land bank. There are a lot of different ways in which the public sector could be more supportive or a better partner on building the housing that we need. And I wondered if you either of you had any thoughts on kind of what kind of interesting public-private partnerships could help spur more housing in the city?
I mean, the first that comes to mind is that there's affordable money made available, that there is, whether it's on the state level, whether it's federal level, that there is money available at interest rates that make sense for these projects. I guess I'm trying to think of what else besides access to capital, because that's a great deal of it. I think working together with the programs to see if they can mirror or work with each other so that you can leverage them better. Because the capital stacks that we work on, it's just not debt and equity. In a traditional city project, that's what the capital stack looks like. Mine's about 10 layers deep, grants, loans, new markets, the whole gamut, right? If you can get all of those things to work better together, like we're trying to marry HUD 221 D4 with CPACE, and they don't work together, right? But I could leverage that if it did. I could do a bigger project. We could scale. We could do more. So I do think that all of these programs need to get together and figure that part out of it as well. I think those are the two main things for me.
Oh, we got to recognize that we have an office problem, right? It's not a Philadelphia issue. It's a urban cities problem. I think we've got anywhere between 48 to 50 million square feet of office. That's probably about 22 to 25%, depending on who you ask, that are vacant. And that number is going to jump over the next coming 2 years, right? Between receiverships and between people who are, have loans that are going to convert from 4% to 8%, they're done, right? So we got to recognize that there's an issue there. And that issue is a big issue for the city, because we're talking about an assessments issue. We're talking about reassessing what the values of office is. We're talking about the income that used to come from these office buildings, the economic impact that they used to generate for the workers that come into these cities. We have enough office space to accept 30,000 employees. It's about 350 square feet per employee. So when you have about 10 million square feet that are empty, that's about 30,000 employees that we need to attract if we are going to, try to maintain a sane office kind of environment. Not every building is going to be converted, right? I'm hearing numbers between 10 to 20% to 30% of the office that's going to be vacant is convertible based on, their floor plates, their location, the shape of the building, and all that. So that's going to be another big challenge that the Cherelle administration has inherited, which is, she's going to be faced with an issue that she's going to have to hopefully work with state and get some policies out there that encourages business to come into. So it's kind of like a full circle. Tax reform that needs to happen, in addition to policies that encourage housing and these conversions, and giving some tax incentives for people to acquire these bad loans or loans that have gone bad and convert them to housing with an affordability component. So that's another source.
Okay. All right. We saw some hands already.
So we have time for a few questions. I think this is like an interesting crowd. I'm going to start right here next to where I was sitting.
Hi, thank you. So the gentleman, sorry I don't know your name, you mentioned Prince George's County as an example. And Philadelphia is a city that's 67% POC, predominantly black. And we have yet to see any policies that provide restitution to communities that were redlined, that were excluded in the 20th century from participating in housing and being able to benefit from it. So in the United States, we have a 9 times differential between black households and white households. From the policies I'm hearing from the stage tonight, I don't see anything or hear anything that would improve the housing situation for the average city worker, frontline worker, anyone who is trying to participate in the open market with the products and services that I heard. I don't see how they could compete in the contemporary market. Like, how are we going to be a city that exists from interdependence? Because even if we had black and brown developers doing market rate or affordable housing, eventually those products are going to go to people who can afford to purchase them, and they will most likely will not look like us. So I'm asking, what policies, equitably are we going to do for a predominantly black and brown city to get more people into the ownership cycle?
Can I take a shot at that? All right. We have a misinformation problem in this city, all right? So if you're a numbers person, just try to walk with me through this. Okay. You know the Turn the Key program, right? So when we say restitution, we're saying how can we build generational wealth, right? I'll tell you about a program that's working, that a lot of people are not talking enough about it. It's the best program out there since I don't know, I haven't seen a better program. You're buying a house that is appraised at $350,000. That the city is saying you're going to buy it for $280,000. The city, in addition to that, is giving you a $75,000 non-payable second mortgage that gets wiped starting year 15 at a $15K a year through year 20. So day one, you're getting $150,000 in equity. 15 years, the deed restriction is off. You've got the mortgage pay down in addition to the increased value of that home, plus the $150,000 that you got day one, right? We're talking about $300,000 in generational wealth that people can afford with less than $2,000 down and a payment of $1,100 a month. That's less than a studio. That program is out there, people are doing it, and when we see people like the BIA pushing the Turn the Key and saying, hey, listen, we should be building 4,000 or 5,000 homes on city land using this program, right? We're talking about 300,000, 7,000 homes, $2 billion in generational wealth that can be transferred to people in the communities. It is working, it's out there, the houses are out there and built, waiting for people to apply for them, and that is smart policy, right? When the 1% construction tax was implemented, the business community, I remember the amount of phone calls I got, you must be nuts to sign up for this. And I said, we need to do this. That is responsible policy. We should agree with the 1% construction tax because it's going to generate $400 million for us to be able to do that program that can make it affordable for people who are making now, Angel, what is it? 57% AMI is the average buyer of these homes. 57% AMI. These are facts. 57%. You can hear that the homes are up to 100%. The average buyer is making $22 an hour. $22 an hour, and you have an opportunity to make $300,000 in generational wealth. What program exists out there that does this? I haven't seen any in my 25 years in business. So that's something that is working. We need to build on it, and we need to expand it. And this is where I say the private sector can play a role here, right? The private sector can play a role, can go in, get the funding to build these jobs, right? And build these homes, deliver them to the people in the neighborhood, and create generational wealth. A household that's making $22,000 to $25,000 an hour type is a household that is living paycheck to paycheck. I made $50,000 before having kids, and I could not have I'm broke in the last week of the month, right? And so there's no way with $50,000 you're ever going to make $250,000 to $300,000 in wealth. And that is something that we should build on. And that's why wealth creating opportunities is extremely important. Creating a class of black and brown developers that is building these homes is important. The access to funds for the black and brown developers, right, to build these 10 home projects that they require $300,000 in equity that's being provided by the Accelerator Fund is important. So now you're closing the circle. You have homes that are built for people in the neighborhood on public land by black and brown developers, and seed money for the equity coming in from the Accelerator Fund. This is what the city needs to do, and this is how we should look at a program like that. It's working, okay, and grow it.
I would just add one thing, and I agree. I think the Turn to Key program is a program that's not well advertised yet, and enough people don't know about it. The one thing that I have found about it, though, is that developers who build at scale are able to really make it work. We do need to figure out some of the tweaks, and I hope that the Accelerator Fund can really fill in some of those gaps, because people that build at scale are also getting the economies of materials. You've got people that build your buildings and go from one site to the next site, and you almost have it, as a formula. So we do need to work on that to make sure that it is available and accessible for black and brown developers to effectively do it economically. So if we can solve for that issue, I think that'll be huge to the success of the future success of that program.
And 100% agreed on that. That's why our first cohorts we're putting together, and when they're building 90 homes, 9 different developers on 10 homes each, we're not going to be going out there contracting 10 homes at a time. We're going to create that critical mass and help get a contractor, get the foundation contract to do 90 foundations, to give them the critical mass. So this is where the private sector needs to put so much more effort, right? In issues like the UDA, issues like what Rick Young is doing, what Angel is doing, where's David Langley from the Accelerator Fund, the hidden soldier? Here you are, right? David left and right trying to make these deals work. This is what we need, and it's working. We just need to advertise it more, get more people signed up, and get the city to invest in them.
We have a question over here.
Yes, before I go too far, an assignment for everyone. There was an article written by Neil Borowski, April the 12th, 1991, in the Philadelphia Inquirer. Do your research and read that article first. And the other thing I wanted to say is that, paraphrasing one of our great philosophers, we don't want anybody to give us nothing, just move out the way, we'll get it ourselves. I'm saying that to say that all the brown and black people in the neighborhoods and the communities that you speak of, in their DNA, they gave the world civilization, the original builders. So when the developers come to town and say the things that they're saying about the educating the folks in the community, they know more inside their genes than you would ever know about building. You look at the great civilization, the pyramids, I can go on with all those things. But they are the builders, and we are the builders. And I'm saying that to say that you need to be informed by what I called OG informed data. Not all the other things that you have on here, because we do know what works, how it works, and how to put it together, because it's in our DNA. I also would like to inform you that, just as an example, and I will be real brief, as an example, the project with the Philadelphia Housing Authority at 21st and Jefferson Street that you mentioned, I would advise that if someone would have worked with the elders with that project, they would have known not to do an entire project like that and pull out the elementary school that was there, rooted in that community, and the junior high school that was rooted in that community. How do you build and rebuild the community and eliminate the schools? I am saying this just to say to you, we got a bigger conversation that we have to have, that this whole thing has to do, and we do know, with the redlining and policies of racism that's built into the system. And until someone can come up with a plan that says you come and you listen to the elders in these communities and build the way they say build, on their terms on how to build, you go nowhere, and we will repeat this. I am a 70-plus senior North Philadelphia lifer. I have seen this process. I have seen this process since I was 5 years old, from the east side of Broad Street to Strawberry Mansion to where I am now, with developing and the same process. We get here, we have these philosophical discussions here and there and this and that, and we are in the same place. Yes, we can deal with our black producers of development and all. It's in their genes too. And we can help train them and work with them, but know that we know how to do this, and we don't need to be having insulting kind of things that you are perpetrating. I'm sorry, folks.
Wasn't a question in there, but does anybody here have a response to that?
Yeah, I have you, I'm sure, who knows Richard Vague? Right, okay, so Richard Vague spoke, sir, about something called the paradox of debt, right? He had a book called The Paradox of Debt. And what he was saying, and I agree with you 100%, is without policies and movements, right, where the black community has gone in history in the sense that being oppressed, the redlining, the institutional racism, right, even though the black and brown community are growing in wealth, yet the white community is starting from somewhere else. And so that growth, that gap is widening, right? And he mentions in the book is the only way for catch-up is that there has to be periodically jumps in that bottom curve so that the catch-up happens. And what I've been trying to say is that programs like the Accelerator Fund provide jumps, the jumps that we're talking about, right? Provides that jump in wealth that the black community deserves in these neighborhoods. So when we talk about a $2 billion wealth creation in these neighborhoods, it's not anyone that's giving, it is deserved, right? It is just that we're talking about the mechanics of it, and the policies that are out there to make it happen should be encouraged, right? And the business community and the private sector needs to buy into it to make sure that what you're saying, right, is something that we don't talk about in 30 years or 40 years from now, that we make sure that these two curves meet.
This is good. We need this kind of discussion, certainly, because I wanted to respond. In his passing last year, one of your great guys, Sam Zell, in an interview, said that affordable housing is a bust. We don't want to have anything to do with affordable housing. And then Jamie Dimon runs in here for a photo op a couple of months ago there.
My man.
In West Philly.
I know. We got to get to other questions.
Okay, and then he says, at the end of his interview, when interest rates goes up, I'm gone.
Okay, thank you.
Understood. Thank you so much for your comments.
Let's go over here real quick. I'll hold it and let's make these questions.
Okay. I'm Maggie Mund. I'm the former president of the Center City Residents Association. Please don't boo me. I'm not a bad person, really. Under my leadership, we established regulations with developers who needed zoning approvals from us to require them to do so much affordable housing and to do so much minority development, allowing minority developers in on the construction projects. I'm a longtime resident of Center City. As you indicated, my husband and I didn't make a lot of money when we moved in there. We moved in there for education. Greenfield School was good. My question is, all the policies in the world can't help overcome our councilmanic prerogative. Councilmanic prerogative is like Darrell Clark, president of city council, denied so many developments where apartment developers wanted to go into his district. And the residents didn't want to have apartments come in there. It has to be single-family housing. And, you have councilmanic prerogative. You have to have the councilman to agree to different street development changes that want to be had, like bike lanes or the multimodal stuff. I mean, it's crazy what the council members can do in this city when it should just be run by policies of planners, transportation officials. How can we overcome councilmanic prerogative?
That's a great question. Does everyone know what councilmanic prerogative is? Okay, the groan comes up. So it's the gentleman's agreement between all of the council members that each district council member will be a de facto emperor in his or her own district, and will have, when it comes to land use prerogatives, they will have final say. No one on the council will oppose. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, it's the bad use of councilmanic prerogative, which is what we have seen. And in my opinion, the reason for the bad use of councilmanic prerogative was caused by the unalignment of any vision for anything to do with housing. You had no vision, right? So everyone wanted to do their thing. And if I was in their place, I would do the exact same thing. That is why it is extremely important that we have an alignment of policy and where we're heading, right? We need to all kind of say, hey, listen, we're gonna build 30,000 homes in the next coming 5 years, and that's how we're gonna do it. This is how much AMI this group is getting. This is how much AMI this group is getting. This is what we can do. This is our resources. I need everyone in this room to buy into this, right? Then you're not gonna see councilmanic prerogative being used the way that you're explaining. I think the use of it in the last 8 to 10 years was just because there's lack of plan. There's no plan, right? It was, everyone doing their own thing. And you have to understand the pressures too that these council members get from their constituents, right? And so I don't think it's out of bad intention. I think it's done in a way where we're trying to protect the neighborhood, and so, but it's the wrong way to do it, right? It's just gonna be done the right way, which is getting everyone aligned at a certain plan that is coming from all the way top to the council members, even to the ward leaders, to the community groups, to the RCOs. There has to be buying into a plan.
Japan has the opposite of councilman prerogative. They have elevated their decision-making about housing policy to essentially the national level with some state input, and they have housing that's more affordable and less segregated than the United States. I mean, I can't imagine a worse system than one where each little fiefdom is all the incentives align against the interests of the larger community.
And we got a question back here, and just one point on councilmanic prerogative is I have challenged, we have an opportunity here. I've challenged new council president Kenyatta Johnson to follow the Nixon going to China model, right? He can be a reformer when it comes to councilmanic prerogative.
Hi, thank you. We have all these people here tonight because we're all very invested in Philadelphia. My question is about actually investing in Philadelphia. Leslie, I know you've done some creative things over the years, enabling people from the neighborhoods to invest in these projects, seeking out capital from other sources in Philadelphia. We have Nora Lichtash from Women's Community Revitalization Project here with an investment opportunity right now to invest in affordable housing. I'm curious if the panel can talk a little bit about, how people in Philadelphia can and should be able to fund these projects and invest in their own neighborhoods and the city.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we have definitely taken advantage of crowdfunding as one of the ways to incorporate people that live in the neighborhoods where we develop so that they can actually be a part of what goes on in their community and have a voice and are able to see upside other than just being able to live there or buy goods and products there, that they can actually invest in our projects and learn about investment and be able to generate a return on that. We want to do more of that. We're trying to do that even in our Navy Yard project, trying to implement that down there. It's not easy. It takes a lot of education also for people to feel comfortable and confident to invest. Because the people that we're talking to, you know, every dollar that they make counts. There's not a lot of disposable income. So the risk is high, the fear is high. So it's not an easy proposition, but it's something that we want to make available and make it to be more commonplace to occur so that people feel more confident in doing it. You know, there's other things that we implement in our projects as well where, you know, rent is not typically reported to the credit agencies. You know, a lot of our community rent because we don't have the capital up front to buy something. We don't have the down payment. We don't, you know, so we wait longer to be able to purchase homes. So in the meantime, you're not building your credit. So if we're able to, you know, report positive payment of your rents, you're at least generating that in the meantime and preparing yourself to purchase a home. So wherever we can do something that's going to uplift and provide an upside to people of color that are being impacted by our projects, that's what we're trying to do. But one thing that I want to mention is that another avenue that could be extremely helpful is impact investing through foundations. You know, foundations donate, they give, you know, which is wonderful, but there is another way to be able to leverage those dollars. If they're able to actually invest them into these projects at a very low interest or low return on those dollars, which would really help a lot of these projects out significantly. I will say kudos to like Barra Foundation, who's really trying to think outside the box and really create some avenues to be able to use those foundation dollars in a very effective and creative way. So if we could get more of these foundations to think that way and be impactful in a different way with their dollars, this could be extremely significant. So that's another way that I think could be very helpful.
We only have time for one or two more. My own bias is for bald men with glasses and goatees.
Thanks, Larry. Just following on your comment, Leslie, you just made about capital. I mean, we tend to de-risk and buy down the cost of capital through tax programs and government, but looking at the private side, I'm curious if you see a way forward with donor advised funds. I mean, they are $300 billion of the $1.2 trillion in philanthropic capital that sits on Wall Street as we sit here. And we don't have to go through all the complications of MRIs and PRIs with private foundations, which I don't see a lot of hope for in terms of the conservatism of private philanthropy. I do see a lot of higher velocity in the donor advised fund world, but it means cracking that coffer open. Wondering if you see any avenues there.
That's a great question to which I don't have an answer, but I would love to learn more because if that is an avenue that is, because I'm always looking under every rock. Googling it tonight, absolutely. But no, that's something that I would like to learn more about also, because if that's a path of least resistance to try to get to those types of dollars, then I definitely want to learn more.
I'll just add that I do know that's much more of a common process out in California, where there's a lot more of like tech capital, for example, a lot of like family foundations getting into that kind of work, putting money towards affordable housing as risk capital.
All right, we'll do one more question and then get the room back to Fiddler Club.
Hi, good evening. I feel a little biased kind of asking this question because I sit in the development space. I've worked with Leslie, I've worked with David, I've worked with Mosaic, but I think just something really interesting that keeps kind of coming up in the conversation is it's not so much in the development component of the process, right? I think a lot of that information is incredibly digestible. It can be easily learned. I think it is in the conversation around the policy, around finance, around issues around zoning that is a little bit also missing from the panel, right? And I think the question that I've kind of had the opportunity to ask twice is from an economic empowerment standpoint, from local owners, small business people, and from people who work at scale in institutional development of how do we really move the needle on those factors that are outside of our control, right? Because I think that the work that Leslie and Mo do is beyond incredible, right? And it is not enough, right? Because we still fight these battles day in and day out with these other communities. And I don't want to read into it, but it is peculiar that there isn't someone from that space sitting here with you, advocating along with the incredible work and incredible policies that you guys are coming up with. So do you feel comfortable sharing with the audience like what those challenges look like? And in the development community, where do we push and where do we also understand that it is a different world from the world that we sit in and that we operate in?
And I guess, and let me ask you a question. When you say someone is absent, are you talking from a zoning, policy, city type of perspective?
ZBA, someone from an RCO, someone from the council district, an affordable financing authority. Yes, I get the Accelerator Fund is created by the city, but maybe a community bank or a traditional partner that does CRA financing. Like, there are still a lot of voices that, as powerful as we can be and as progressive as we can be, that can still derail a lot of the transformative work.
No, that's true. That's true. I will say this, and I know that for all of you, you know PIDC, and I think that they do tremendous work. I think they want to do more. I think they should do more. I think that they're a voice that needs to be heard often. And we need to continue to push and challenge them, because the one thing I've really learned about them is that they do want to do more and be more impactful. I think that's a very important place for us to be working with them. I think that the new president is dynamic. I think she's got a lot that she wants to get done. We work with them all the time. They have been a part, I think, of all of our projects for one reason or another, because they're the conduit of the grants, or they were the allocatee of the new market tax credits, or they provided energy money at a lower interest rate because we needed money that was more affordable. So that is a place that needs to be really more relied on and really have some deeper conversations. They understand the need for funds for Black and brown businesses to be able to get off the ground, be stabilized. They know that we need pre-development dollars as Black and brown developers, because we don't have, the wealthy uncle that we can go to like a lot of our counterparts can. I'm just being very candid and honest. I'm the auntie in the house. People come to me. I ain't have anybody to go to, right? So when my partner and I started our business, it was on a wing and a prayer, honestly. And we got our first dollars from the reinvestment fund. And they said, if you can build in a food desert, we'll turn this loan into a grant. And that was the first set of dollars that we got, right? So it takes TRF, PIDC, these organizations that are talking about stepping up, stepping in, and doing this. They need to do it. They need to get together, they need to collaborate, and they need to make it happen, right? And we need to push them. We need to constantly be pushing them. It's taken us 15 years to be heard, right? It changed when Floyd was on the TV. All of a sudden, everybody got woke, right? Everybody got woke. We were talking about this for 13 years, right? And then all of a sudden, people are like, I'm like, yeah. God dang it, yeah, right? So we can't let people get amnesia, because that happens too. Let's be clear. Everybody gets comfortable again and things just go back to status quo. We can't let that happen. We got to keep our foot on the pedal, right? So, but I do think that PIDC is going to play a role in all of what's going on. So I would be communicating with them for sure.
Yeah, I want to add to that. The new administration is that NDA that I signed. So they're going to be adamant about making changes to make sure that what you're saying, which is the buy-in of zoning, CDR, the RCO process, everything in our city has to be. Everyone has to be held accountable. The developers have to be held accountable. The RCOs have to be held accountable. CDR, zoning, LNI, right? Everyone has to buy in. That's why I always say it comes from the top, right? It will come from the administration hearing from nonprofits and the problem that they're having, the developing community of for-profits and what the problems they're having, looking at best practices in different cities and what has worked and what has not worked. And the stuff that has not worked should not be tried in the city of Philadelphia. Enough of wasting time, right? And we should look at the stuff that actually worked and implement and not reinvent the wheel and make sure that the people are held accountable. That's the most important part of everything, because we have to be held accountable, city employees, elected officials, everyone. And I think that in the next coming period, I think we're all going to see a more of a unified vision of where we want the city in the next coming 4 to 8 years, right? And when it comes to housing and development and in terms of policy making. I'm optimistic about it. And I have a feeling that the working relationship that's between the current mayor and the current council president is going to be a different dynamic than what we had for the last 8 years. And that's going to really speed things up, in my opinion, to get the right solutions out there.
I just want to say, Leslie, you mentioned Reinvestment Fund. It was founded by our late founding chairman of the Citizen, Jeremy Nowak, who liked to say that the future belongs to the problem solvers. And we have a panel of problem solvers. And what's really heartening is about 200 or 250 problem solvers coming out on a Monday night. So I can't thank you all enough, and thank this tremendous panel, and buy the books of Diana and Rick back there at Head House Books. Thank you all.